our culture, our language, our political, our justice system is not significantly the same as the French system. French in France specifically told that he has tried his effort to assimilate, but because of the differences has not worked. We will continue to eradicate our identity by the systematic France erase our economic structure, uprooted every aspect of our social upbringing, and replaced with a foreign to our people, the Francophone system. And it is henceforth that we together must, in every circumstance, this is not the spirit or a moment that we should neglect, but we must. We have, in the face of reality of international community, they choose moral wrong and dwell on the moral wrong and accept the moral wrong to be the genuine principles in which they must agree upon. If the United Nations says decolonizations, Resolution 1514 XV, it called for decolonizations. It did not call for partial decolonizations. So the people of Southern Cameroon is in line with the Decolonization Act, and it should have been fully implemented without conditional given to the people of Southern Cameroon. Equatorial Guinea is not up to 2 million. If the analysis that I am going to be presented in this subsequent broadcast is stated that they have in their research finding that it's a total of 26 million people. And if in a total of 26 million, and Southern Cameroon is 20% of the populations, what is the population of Southern Cameroon? It's probably equivalent to 8 millions, which is more than Equatorial Guinea, which is just simply 2 millions and have their sovereignty. In fact, we did not depend on the British government or the British monarch for, just like the rest of the part that joined the North, they depend on subvention from the British monarch. But we, the people of Southern Cameroon, did not. We have excess surplus in revenue in our balance sheet. We did not need, in the argument that the British used to give that we did not have economic stability to be able to sustain and maintain ourselves, that is absolutely a bogus statement made by the UK government in their analysis. In fact, La République du Cameroon depends on 70% of natural resources that comes from Southern Cameroon to sustain La République. And if La République cannot sustain itself and must depend on the Southern Cameroon, what is the argument that the UK is arguing? We have written every letter to the highest level of government in this planet Earth. I have personally written to the White House. I have written to the UK. I have written to French president. I've written to every highest level of government that is involved in this crisis in Southern Cameroon. And yet, they didn't understand and they haven't taken it serious. They haven't taken it matters. That is something that they have to do something about it. Of course, they ignore it because they minimize that they have the power and that they can suppress us. But this has come to the reality that guns, those who have the good guns will handle the good guns. And that is the clear fact. And that is what the people of Southern Cameroon are taking up with. Because we have used unanimously dialogue, which is a normal way of dealing with conflicts, which is debating of the issues. But yet, it doesn't draw attention of the international community to see into this problem. That is something all of them had to take initiative. They are calling on La République du Cameroon, a perpetrator, to initiate dialogue. Of course, if individuals would have initiated dialogue, why then should be a justice system? Of course, why should there be a court? Why should there be an other system? Because we believe that those individuals, that is the purpose, resolve the facts. But unfortunately, they are not ready. Of course, if all of us says the truth, they said veracity. And I look at veracity. Veracity means speaking the truth, and that the world community will stand for the truth. And if the world community can stand for the truth, then who is La République du Cameroon in the place of Southern Cameroon? Of course, La République doesn't find any place in Southern Cameroon whatsoever. But yet, they are being forced, and that the people of Southern Cameroon has to accommodate a foreign nation with a totally geopolitical background that is unanimously not similar to the people of Southern Cameroon. The ongoing slaughtering of our citizens is something that is painful. It is painful, but international community, it doesn't matter to them because their personal interests. Of course, the UK government, with the Prime Minister, that is current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, in the face of this mass crisis, his head of the government are utilizing his own cabinet to negotiate contract of gas exploration and other lucrative businesses in Southern Cameroon without disregard perpetrated without disregard to the accuracy. It's fundamentally wrong. And I mean, it is not a matter that one will feel, but it is a systematic painful that I can see that the UK government ignored that the people of Southern Cameroon should in any circumstances be under a foreign nation, La République du Cameroon. How many citizens of Southern Cameroon has been slaughtering? The man was hosting the United Nations General Assembly. They wouldn't even mention about the question of Southern Cameroon to be put in discussion at the United Nations. Of course, when you look at France prepared La République du Cameroon both militarily in every aspect of the defense to be able to be what they are. Of course, our people were deprived every aspect because the UK believed that they are going to sustain us in case of defense or foreign attack. Of course, they put a police system that was systematically rooted out by a foreign nation, La République du Cameroon. In fact, it didn't occur to them to put a halt that by systematic uprooting these people, you are going the wrong way. Of course, UK admitted La République du Cameroon on the condition of Southern Cameroon. And if the people of Southern Cameroon disapprove the existence with relationship, it would have occurred that UK would have questioned the membership of La République du Cameroon in the Commonwealth of Nations. Of course, it doesn't.
Colonization have had lasting effects in many parts of the world. Nowhere is this more the case than in Africa. Some notable examples I've already covered include Somaliland, Western Togoland, Eritrea and Biafra. However, one of the most significant current examples of a conflict that emanates from the legacy of colonialism is the Anglophone crisis, or the Anglophone problem as it's sometimes called, in Cameroon. Since 2017, fighting between English-speaking pro-independence armed groups in the west of the country and the French-speaking central government has become steadily more violent. So, what is the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon? Cameroon lies in West Africa. At 475,000 square kilometres or 180,000 square miles, it's the 53rd largest of the 193 members of the United Nations. According to latest estimates, its population currently stands at around 26 million. This is made up of a number of different ethnic groups with an estimated 24 languages spoken in the country. However, the two official languages are French and English, and this is where the main divide has emerged. While the vast majority speak French as their main language, it's estimated that around 20% of the population are primarily English speakers. The story really starts in the 19th century and the scramble for Africa. Alongside French, British and Belgian colonial expansion, Germany also sought to carve out its own imperial holdings. The most significant of these was the territory of Cameroon, an area that comprised what is now Cameroon, as well as parts of the Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Gabon and Nigeria. In 1884, German control over the area was confirmed at the Berlin Conference, which formally demarcated the boundaries of European colonial influence in Africa. However, Germany's control over Cameroon came to an end 30 years later during the First World War, when Britain and France seized and divided the territory. While France took control of around 80% of the territory, Britain took control of the remaining 20%, which bordered the colony and protectorate of Nigeria, the largest British colonial holding in West Africa. In 1922, Britain's control over the British Cameroons was confirmed by the League of Nations. Administered from neighbouring Nigeria, the British Cameroons were in turn divided into two separate parts, the northern and southern Cameroons. As the process of decolonisation got underway at the end of the Second World War, the British and French Cameroons formally became UN Trust territories, and on the 1st of January 1960, the French Cameroons became independent as the Republic of Cameroon. This now left the question of what to do with the British Cameroons. Following several UN missions to the territory, the two parts were separately offered two options: join neighbouring Nigeria, which was preparing for independence, or unite with the Republic of Cameroon. Independence was not on the table. The referendums were held on the 11th of February 1960. The northern Cameroons, which were predominantly Muslim, opted by 60% to join neighbouring Nigeria. Despite objections from the Republic of Cameroon, which unsuccessfully referred the matter to the International Court of Justice, this took place on the 31st of May 1961, 4 months before Nigeria became independent. Meanwhile, in the south, 70% of voters opted to join the Republic of Cameroon. On the 21st of April 1961, the UN formally endorsed the result and called for talks between the sides. Following a process that's now contested by Anglophone Cameroonians, who argued that the results were never formally confirmed, it was determined that the two parts would unite as a federation. On the 1st of October 1961, the Southern Cameroons officially joined what now became the Federal Republic of Cameroon. As so often happens in similar cases, the relationship soon soured. While some Anglophones held senior office, such as John Foncha, the pro-unification premier of the Southern Cameroons, who became the country's prime minister and vice president, most soon felt overpowered by the French-speaking majority, which had constructed a highly centralised federation under Amadou Ahidjo, the autocratic first president of the country. Just a decade later, on the 20th of May 1972, a referendum was held to abolish the federation and grant more powers to the president. At the same time, the country was also renamed the United Republic of Cameroon. In the years that followed, the Anglophone region, now divided into two parts, the northwest and southwest provinces, continued to see its powers decline. In 1982, Ahidjo was replaced by Paul Biya, the country's second and current president. As well as steadily eroding the region's autonomy, he changed the country's name back to the original Republic of Cameroon. It was against this backdrop that various groups from the English-speaking regions of Cameroon came together in 1993 for the first all-Anglophone conference. There they issued a declaration calling for the restoration of the 1961 federal constitution. At the same time, Anglophones began to campaign internationally for their cause. Former Prime Minister Foncha, who had led the Southern Cameroons into the Union, now made the case for a return of the region's autonomy, but with no results. The following year, the conference repeated its demands, but this time insisted that if they weren't met, they would proceed with a declaration of independence. But rather than address the concerns, the government changed the constitution again, essentially erasing the last vestiges of decentralisation, and launched a crackdown on what it regarded as separatism. This led to significant numbers of arrests and sporadic violence. However, by around 2000, it seemed that political unrest had largely been quelled, although pro-independence political activity continued for much of the decade. The current phase of the crisis began in late 2016. As protests erupted over the increasing number of French speakers being posted to the region's schools and courts, the government again launched a crackdown. This rapidly descended into violence as armed groups fought back. On the 1st of October 2017, the anniversary of the incorporation of the Southern Cameroons into Cameroon, a number of groups announced the creation of an independent Federal Republic of Ambazonia. a name derived from the Ambas Bay, where a short-lived British protectorate had emerged in the 19th century around a missionary settlement of freed slaves. While many of the pro-independence organisations favoured a peaceful process, in November 2017 the Cameroon government launched a major armed campaign against dissent in the region. This in turn led to a growing militancy among a number of groups. By the middle of 2019, the situation was becoming increasingly unstable. As well as clashes between government forces and separatists, civilians were increasingly targeted as well. On top of the several thousand who'd already been killed, it was estimated that over 500,000 people had been displaced by the fighting, with tens of thousands fleeing across the border into neighbouring Nigeria. In addition, Anglophone militias also targeted schools, which was seen as a way for the government to impose French on the local population. Indeed, estimates suggested that 80% of the schools in Anglophone regions were closed. In 2019, as fighting began to spill over into neighbouring Francophone areas, threatening the possibility of civil war, President Biya announced the launch of a major national dialogue. Although the move was widely dismissed by many Anglophone groups, which saw it as a stage-managed propaganda effort, a number of measures were proposed. These included a special status for the two Anglophone regions, the election of local governors, the reintegration of fighters, a restoration of the country to its former name, the United Republic of Cameroon, and the relaunch of major infrastructure projects in the English-speaking regions. While the proposals made some moves towards increased autonomy, they fell far short of a restoration of federalism, let alone demands for full independence that many Anglophones now wanted. Indeed, even many international observers argued that the proposals were insufficient. As the situation continued to deteriorate in 2020, it appeared that the government was starting to consider a political settlement. Although later denied by the government, reports emerged that secret ceasefire talks had been held in July with some of the most prominent jailed pro-independence figures. These included Julius Ayoktabe, who had been proclaimed as the first president of Ambazonia before being arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment by a military court for terrorism and secession. Since then, and despite growing international calls for dialogue and pressure from internal opposition groups for a peaceful settlement, there's been no let-up in the fighting. On the 24th of October 2020, armed fighters attacked a school, killing a number of children, an attack that was strongly condemned by the UN Secretary-General. More generally, there were growing claims of serious and systematic human rights abuses by both sides of the conflict. This includes kidnapping and the use of child soldiers by pro-independence militias and extrajudicial killings, torture and cruel and inhuman punishment by government forces. Meanwhile, the death toll, as well as the number of those displaced and more generally affected by the conflict, continues to grow. The Anglophone crisis in Cameroon is one of the most serious conflicts in Africa. Since 2017, it's led to many thousands of deaths, seen hundreds of thousands displaced, and led to severe disruption to the lives of millions of people. And yet, behind it lies an all-too-familiar story of colonisation and decolonisation that saw peoples with very different historical experience and subsequently imprinted with very different European cultural traditions shoehorned within a single state that soon starts to break down as one group asserts its authority over another and abandons the political system created at independence. What makes this situation particularly tragic is that there does, or at least did, appear to be an acceptable option to resolve the resentment that led to conflict. A federal settlement guaranteeing extensive autonomy to the Anglophone community was the obvious solution, and a solution that many Anglophones seem willing to accept. However, as is so often the case in such situations, positions have now become polarised. Fundamentally mistrusting the central government and now committed to the idea of independence, many within the Anglophone community seem determined to press ahead with the hopes of realising an independent Ambazonia. Meanwhile, the central government seems determined to hold on to the territory for no other reason than it sees it as its own. regardless of the fact that after decades of repression and efforts to rid the Anglophone areas of their political and cultural autonomy, many ordinary English-speaking Cameroonians have no wish to continue to be a part of the state. I hope you found that interesting. If so, here are some more videos that you might find useful.
The issue on the Anglophone piece, I won't go into detail on that. I think the article plus the video this morning did a very good job of explaining the history of how it got to the point where we are today. In October of 2017, when it came kind of to a head, the Anglophone states said we want to actually form our own state, the Ambazonia state. There have been issues there with atrocities, issues with allegations of law of war issues, and this is something that it brings all this to a head. Over the last several months or so, the State Department has put on hold several security forces. Assistance programs. Right before the election in October, the ambassador went and paid a visit with President Biya, and we had a very direct conversation with him with regards to investigation of these atrocities, transparency.
Serious conflicts in Africa, as well as thousands of lives.
Appropriate battlefield behavior. Since that time, the State Department has made a decision not to allocate significant money, but at the same time they've released some money that's been on hold to things like Scan Eagle and Cessna aircraft that assist in the Boko Haram fight.
I want to take a moment to thank James Lindsay for that brilliant report on the question of Southern Cameroon Ambazonians. And you can give a snapshot of what is going on in Southern Cameroon territory. Southern Cameroon territory, as rightly he said, it should have been decolonized. Resolution 1514 XV explicitly stated that those territorial integrity that were under the Allied forces, those territories that were under the Allied forces, be given their rightful independence. It doesn't matter whether there was just a single person in that territory. It would state those territories that were under the Allied forces be given their rightful independence. So Southern Cameroon meet those criteria and therefore should have been given their rightful independence. It shouldn't have been given a conditional independence to live under a foreign nation with different philosophy, different ideology. But the fact that the Allied forces has defeated Germany, and so there were certain territory that were allowed for the Allied members to prepare them for immediate independence. It didn't say there's a certain number of population before they should. It didn't say so. It said be given their rightful independence. Therefore, the people of Southern Cameroon should have been given their right independence. There is no question about that. But why is it that they believe that the people of Southern Cameroon should live under the umbrella of a foreign nation, La République du Cameroon? Because the British has personal egoistic tendency. They did not want his brother, France, to step into the Middle East. And so they can have a vast global control of the Middle East and get part of southern Cameroon as a compensation. And that is the trade deal. But in fact, this is the trouble. We have lost how many souls of our people being killed by a foreign nation, La Republic du Cameroon. In fact, British joined the European Union, but their currency, the British pound, did not step into the European Union. They maintained their currency, even the fact that they were going to be ruled by the Brussels headquarters. But unfortunately, it didn't last. It was a short life that British decided to leave the European Union. There was no single gunshot. There was nothing. There was not unanimous. It was just a conversation and discussion under the terms whether they should live together. They choose to leave European Union. And they are now a full nation on its own without authorization from the European Union. So if our people cannot make those decisions, and I can imagine a foreign secretary under this administration describe that the territorial integrity of Cameroon, it is an absurd to watch the British government unanimously blindfolded saying that the territorial integrity of Cameroon. I mean, it's an absurd. What territorial integrity are you referring to? That is a rubbish. That is absolutely rubbish. And that is why we must determine, because we have, it is the truth, we have to determine what is our decision. Since we are considered as the lesser class of the society, especially in Africa, none of us are even in the table of the United Nations, or to have a voice or to say something. But because we have the lesser class, lesser quality, in fact, I know United States recognize, because the Secretary of Defense here in the US is an African, although not originally from Africa. But it showed those synonymous symbolism by the Biden administration to show love for Africans, as that they are also have similar effect, dominant effect. But unfortunately, but in terms of Africa continent as a whole, they are being marginalized in every aspect of life when it comes to issues of personal belonging. The people of Southern Cameroon doesn't choose to belong to a foreign nation, La Republic du Cameroon. Yet, it doesn't occur to UK recently that they were members, they just host the United Nations Security Council, that they have the prerogative right to table the question of Southern Cameroon for initial discussion, because they are afraid to offend their brother, France, and the slaughtering of our people continue. In regard of that, but we must raise our voice to the highest level to ensure that the people of Southern Cameroon has a place they can live, a place they can call home. Many of our brothers and sisters cannot travel back home because we have a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroon, that prevent the aspect of our people to travel back home, because the military of La Republique du Cameroon, a foreign nation, deprive citizens of its own territory to ever step on, arrest some of our brothers and sisters and dump them in the Yaoundé Konenge. In fact, they have no legal authority. If the resolution of 1961, if we had an initiative, it states that citizens of Southern Cameroon must be tried in Southern Cameroon. Citizens of La Republique be tried in La Republique. There should be a unanimous agreement. But at the current situation, our people are all languishing in La Republique junkyard called the Konenge. I can imagine the pain they have to go through in this crisis. Of course, many people frame the question, the Anglophones, looking like it is any tendency. This is Southern Cameroon, or you call the Ambazonians. Whatever you choose, that should be a reflection of the people of Southern Cameroon or Ambazonia. They call Anglophone because they want to downgrade it to reflect their own personal, egoistic personal tendency to present the case so that they shouldn't recognize the purpose of it. Southern Cameroon doesn't fall in those criteria as specifically stated. Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation, just equally like La République du Cameroon, that were voted by the United Nations. Why is it that they must live under an umbrella of a foreign nation? Because they want to satisfy the interests of France. France is very unanimously involved because of the raw material that are being utilized and fed the French citizens. Why we live on the bread of crumbs? That is the world we live on. Of course, they are heading to the NATO nations in Europe to discuss global crisis. Of course, it is effective to protect and maintain security in the entire world. But the truth is, let the truth be judged not by their own personal interests. Imagine Resolution 1514 SV is an international norms must be fully respected and restored and allow the people of Southern Cameroon to have a natural air and breathe in their home without any form of obtrusion. This is Fundon Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States, on the question of Southern Cameroon Ambazonia. I wish you all had a good discussion or briefing or broadcast, whatever it is, and I will wish you all the rest of your day.